Hello everyone. Today we will be dealing with the second chapter in orthodontics, which is development of dentition. So this is a relatively simple, and most often the questions from this chapter are very straightforward and factual questions. And the references for this chapter are the Contemporary Orthodontics by William R. Profit, and this other one is the Art and Science of Orthodontics by Balaji. So in the development of dentition, first we will be dealing about the pre-dental period. So the most important feature of the pre-dental period is the gum pads. So gum pads are nothing but alveolar processes which are present at the time of the birth. We all know normally children when they are born, they don't have teeth, but rather they have gum pads which are horseshoe shaped, and they represent the alveolar processes at the time of the birth. So what is of more interest to us is the features of the gum pad. I have already mentioned they are horseshoe shaped. Now coming into detail each of the features. The first one is the dental groove. So dental groove is a groove which separates the labial or buccal portion and the lingual portion of the gum pads. Now transverse grooves. So these gum pads are divided into 10 segments, that is corresponding to the primary dentition. The gum pads will be divided into 10 segments by transverse grooves. So the groove between the future position of the canines and the deciduous first molars are called as lateral sulcus. Now the another important feature is the gingival groove. So gingival groove is one which demarcates the gum pads from the palate in the upper arch and from the floor of the mouth in the lower arch. So there are four important features of the gum pads. One is the dental groove which separates the labial or buccal portion and the lingual portion. The second one is the transverse grooves which divide the gum pads into 10 segments, and the transverse groove between the canines and the deciduous first molars are called as the lateral sulcus. And finally the gingival groove which separates the gum pad from the palate and the floor of the mouth. Now another important feature of the gum pads, that is when at the time of the birth, please note at the picture at the right top corner, you can see that the contact between the upper and lower gum pads are only in the posterior region. In the anterior region, there is an open bite is present. So this open bite is a common feature in a newborn baby. It helps in the suckling. And also there is a complete overjet of the upper arch around the lower arch. So these two are common features of a newborn baby. It's not a malocclusion that the newborn baby is having an anterior open bite and there is a complete overjet. Then another important thing is that normally there won't be any tooth present at the time of the birth, but if at all a tooth is present at the time of the birth, then it is called as a natal teeth. And if the tooth is erupted during the first month of the age, then it is called as a neonatal teeth. So from the pre-dental period, we are now discussing about the dentition period. So first one is the deciduous dentition period. So around 6 months of age, there will be eruption of the mandibular deciduous central incisors. So that marks the beginning of the deciduous dentition period, which is around 6 months of age. And this gets completed by the age of 2.5 to 3.5 years with the eruption of the deciduous second molars. So from 6 months to 3.5 years of age is exclusively the deciduous dentition period. Like the development of the deciduous dentition is happening during this period. Now the normal eruption sequence for a deciduous dentition is your central incisors, your lateral incisors, then your deciduous first molars, then the canines, and finally the deciduous second molars. So it is A, B, D, C, E. It's not the normal sequence A, B, C, D, E. The difference is when you are interchanging your canines and your deciduous first molar. So it is A, B, D, C, E. Just remember that. It's only in the differences in the position of the C and D. Now another important features of this period is that there will be a deep bite. So in the initial deciduous dentition period there will be a deep bite, but it is a self-correcting malocclusion. It's not a malocclusion that has to be treated. When you are seeing a 3-year-old girl or a boy with the deep bite, you need not do any treatment for correcting that, because that deep bite is quite normal during a deciduous dentition period and it is self-correcting. So how does it correct by itself? It corrects by the eruption of the deciduous molars, and there will be attrition of the incisors, and finally due to the growth, because as the growth happens there will be forward movement of the mandible, so the deep bite get corrected by itself. Now coming to another important feature of the deciduous period, which is the physiological spacing or developmental spacing. So normally during the deciduous dentition period, there will be spacing between the primary dentition. It is a normal feature, so absence of which indicates the possibility of the crowding in the future permanent dentition. So now ideally there should be 6 mm of spacing in the deciduous dentition so that it can be replaced properly, so that we can get a well aligned permanent dentition. So these physiological spaces are also called as primary spaces, simian spaces, or anthropoid spaces. So in the upper arch it is seen mesial to the canine, whereas in the lower arch it is seen distal to the canine. So please note in the picture also, the upper arch, the physiologic spaces are seen mesial to the canine, whereas in the lower arch these spaces are seen distal to the canine. And one more important thing, these physiological spaces or developmental spaces are utilized during the early mesial shift of the molars. So what is mesial shift of the molars, that I will be discussing in the upcoming slides, but just note this point for now. These physiological spaces are utilized for the early mesial shift of the molars. So by the time all your primary dentition is erupted, when we are examining the patient, we have to see what is the molar relationship. So we don't follow the Angles classification or Angles molar relationship in primary dentition period. Instead, in primary dentition, we have Baum's classification of primary molar relation. So Baum has classified the relationship between the deciduous second molars, upper and lower arch, into 3 categories. The first one is a flush terminal plane. So flush terminal plane means the distal surfaces of the upper and the lower second deciduous molars are in one vertical plane, and this is a very normal feature of the deciduous dentition. Now the second one is a mesial step. So mesial step happens when the distal surface of the lower second deciduous molars is more mesial to that of the upper second deciduous molars, and the distal step is happening when the distal surface of the lower second deciduous molars is distal to the upper second deciduous molars. So there are 3 classification of primary molar relationship by Baum. One is the flush terminal plane, when the distal surfaces of the upper and lower second deciduous molars are in a single straight line. Mesial step means the lower second deciduous molars is positioned mesial, so its distal surface will be mesial to the upper molars. Now distal step means the lower second deciduous molars are positioned more distal to the upper second deciduous molars. So mixed dentition period എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ there is simultaneous occurrence of the permanent and the deciduous teeth. So mixed dentition period is also called as a transitional phase because there is eruption of the permanent and there is exfoliation of the deciduous teeth which is happening during this. And this period is divided into 3 stages. The first one is the first transitional period, second one is the intertransitional period, and third one is the second transitional period. So the major phenomena or major changes which are happening in the mixed dentition period are very significant from an exam point of view. So first we will see the first transitional period, which is characterized by the emergence of the first permanent molar, which begins by age of 6 years of age. So a mixed dentition period is usually marked by the emergence of the first permanent molar around the age of 6 years. So as when we discussing about the deciduous dentition, we already mentioned that the flush terminal plane is a common feature or a normal feature of a deciduous dentition. So when the deciduous molars, second molars, are in a flush terminal plane relationship, the erupting first permanent molars will also be in a terminal relationship, flush terminal plane relationship. So what happens is that the first permanent molars has to move forward or has to move mesially by around 3 to 5 millimeters so as to come into a class 1 molar relationship. So this mesial shift of the molars are happening in early mixed dentition period, that is during the first transitional period as well as in the second transitional period. So when this is happening during the first transitional period or early mixed dentition period, it is called as early mesial shift. And early mesial shift makes use of the primate spaces. We have already seen what are primate spaces. So early mesial shift of the lower first molars are making use of the primate spaces. Now late mesial shift is happening during the second transitional period and it makes use of the levay space. So in the previous slide, we have seen that in the late mesial shift, the molars are mesially migrating by making use of the levay space of Nance. So we will see what is levay space of Nance is. So when the deciduous molars are getting replaced by the permanent premolars, there is a size difference between the permanent premolars and canines and the deciduous molars and canines. So the mesodistal width of the primary dentition will be larger or greater than the permanent premolars. So this size difference is what contributes to the levay space of Nance. So this is used by the permanent lower molars for the late mesial shift. So this space amounts to about 1.8 millimeters in maxillary arch, that is 0.9 mm on each side, and 3.4 millimeters in mandibular arch, which is 1.7 millimeters on each side. So these values are extremely important, and please note that it is 1.8 mm in the upper arch as such. So sometimes the questions can come as the levay space of Nance on one side, unilaterally how much it is. So when you are answering such questions, please be careful whether they are asking for the whole arch or one particular portion, one side of the arch. That is extremely important because sometimes we jump into giving answers in the wrong way. So please, when you're getting a simple question as such this, please note whether they are asking for the levay space of Nance in an arch as such or one unilateral side. And the values actually you have to remember it always. It is extremely important. 1.8 millimeters in the maxillary arch completely and 3.4 millimeters in the mandibular arch entirely. And also note that the levay space of Nance is actually more in the lower arch compared to the upper arch. So in first transitional period, there is a early mesial shift is happening. Now another important thing is happening in the first transitional period is the deciduous incisors will get replaced by the permanent incisors. So these permanent incisors are larger than the deciduous incisors. So there will be a discrepancy between the size and the amount of the space available for the accommodation of the permanent incisors. So this size difference is called as incisal liability, which is around 7 millimeters in upper arch and 5 millimeters in the mandible. So this size discrepancy is overcome by three mechanisms. First one is by utilizing the primate of the physiological spaces in the dentition. Then second one is when there is the growth is happening during the mixed dentition period, there will be an increase in the intercanine width so as to accommodate the large permanent incisors. And third thing, the permanent incisors will be slightly labially inclined than their primary incisors, so they will require only less space because they are getting little bit labial inclination. So these are the three mechanisms by which the permanent incisors are overcoming the space deficiency or called as incisal liability. Now moving on to the second transitional period, where the important phenomenon which is occurring is called as a broadbent phenomena or an ugly duckling stage. So what happens during this period is that around 8 to 9 years of age, the developing permanent canines will exert a pressure on the roots of the lateral incisors. Please look at the picture. You can clearly see that the developing canines are putting a pressure on the roots of the lateral incisor. So when they are placing a pressure on the roots of the lateral incisors, the crowns of the laterals and the central incisors will tend to diverge distally because the roots are converging mesially and the crowns will tend to diverge distally. So this causes a midline spacing and a malalignment of the tooth, and often this gives a ugly appearance for the children during this period. So that is why it is called as an ugly duckling stage, because the tooth appears flared, there will be spacing between the tooth. So hence it is called as ugly duckling stage. And most of the time what happens is that the parents as well as the kid finds it very apprehensive and they will approach the orthodontist for the treatment. But please understand that this is a self-correcting malocclusion, or it is a transient malocclusion. That is, later when the canines get erupted and they release the pressure on the roots of the incisors, the teeth tend to align themselves without any intervention. So please note that there is no need for any orthodontic treatment for ugly duckling staging or the midline diastema which is appearing during this period. It will tend to get corrected by itself. So this is a theoretical knowledge which you have to put into practice when you are asked it by in a clinical scenario. So most of the time you will get questions like, a 9-year-old child approached with midline diastema, the canines are not erupted. So what you have to do? So the answer will be always you have to wait and watch. There is no need for any immediate intervention during that period, because that will only further worsens the scenario. It may completely block out the canines also. So there should not be any intervention during this period, and it is quite natural to have a midline spacing around 8 to 9 years of age, and this is called as Broadbent phenomena or ugly duckling stage. So previously we have seen the Baum's terminal plane relationship in the primary dentition. Now we will see how the molar relationship in primary dentition will determine the permanent dentition molar relationship, whether it will end up in a class 2 or class 1 or a class 3 relationship from the primary molar relationships. So first we will see the distal step. So before that, one more thing, the one of the few factors which influences the transition from primary molar relation to permanent dentition is the growth of the mandible as well as the shift of the teeth. We have already seen the early and late mesial shift, and along with the shift of the teeth, the forward growth of the mandible also determines how the primary molar relationship will end up in the permanent dentition. Now, the first thing is the distal step relationship. We know how a distal step relationship will look like in a primary dentition. Now, this distal step can end up in a class 2 permanent molar relationship if there is a minimal growth differential. So, if there is a minimal growth differential and there is a slight shift of the teeth, this can end up in class 2 molar relationship. Whereas, if the distal step is there in primary dentition and there is a forward growth of the mandible, then what happens is that it can end up in an end-to-end relationship in permanent dentition. The permanent molar dentition will be an end-to-end relationship if there is a forward growth of the mandible along with the distal step primary dentition. Now the second scenario is, in primary dentition you are having a flush terminal plane. That is, the distal surfaces of the second deciduous molars, both upper and lower, are forming in a straight line. Now this can end up in an end-to-end relationship if there is a minimal growth differential. Whereas it can end up in a class 1 molar relationship if there is a forward growth of the mandible. So if there is a minimal differential growth, then it can end up in an end-to-end relationship, whereas if there is a forward growth of the mandible, it can end up in a class 1 molar relationship. Whereas if there is a shift of the teeth, it can also slightly move on to a class 1 molar relationship. But if there is a minimal growth differential, the flush terminal plane will always end up in an end-to-end relationship. Now the third scenario is the mesial step. So mesial step can end up in a class 1 molar relationship when there is a minimal growth of the mandible. But if there is extreme forward shift of the mandible, then it can move on to a class 3 molar relationship. So please understand the picture, and you should be knowing how the so if you see a person, a child with a distal step relationship, what are the possibilities for having a permanent dentition? It can be either a class 2 relationship or an end-to-end relationship. And flush terminal plane, it can result in an end-to-end relationship or a class 1 relation if there is a forward growth of the mandible and there is a shift in the tooth. And mesial step can end up in a class 1 in most cases with minimal growth differential. But if there is a forward growth of the mandible, this mesial step can end up in a class 3 molar relationship. So we have seen in the important phenomena which are occurring during the development of the dentition in the pre-dental period, the primary dentition period, and in the mixed dentition period. So, extremely important. It's extremely important you to understand that there are certain malocclusions which does not require any active treatment, or rather they are called as self-correcting or transient malocclusions. So these are open bite in the predentate period, that is the open bite in the gum pads. The second one is the deep bite in primary dentition. Then spacing in primary dentition, the primate spaces or bomb spaces is quite a normal phenomena in primary dentition. You don't need any active treatment for that. Then coming to mixed dentition period, flush terminal plane. Flush terminal plane is a normal observation in the mixed dentition period, a primary dentition period. And ugly duckling stage. Ugly duckling stage in the mixed dentition period is also a normal phenomena. It's a self-correcting malocclusion. There is no need for any active intervention for any of this self-correcting or transient malocclusions. But there are some scenarios which are not self-correcting and which requires active intervention. One and extremely important one is the crossbite. So crossbite even at the youngest age requires the active intervention. If the patient is presenting before you at 6 years or 8 years, you should immediately go for correcting the crossbite. And the other one is midline diastema more than 2 mm, which is also not a self-correcting malocclusion. So finally, in development of dentition, we will be discussing about safety valve mechanism. So this is an extremely important topic. So when we mentioned about incisor liability, we have seen that so as to compensate for the incisor liability, there will be an increase in the intercanine width of both arches. So this increase in intercanine width will be happening around 6 to 9 years of time period for boys and 6 to 8 years of time period for girls. Whereas the increase in intercanine width will be prolonged in maxilla till the age of 16 years for boys and 12 years of age for girls. So this prolonged increase in intercanine width in the maxilla is actually a nature's safety valve mechanism. For what? So that's the question, for why there is a safety valve mechanism. So we have seen that the mandible in the increase in intercanine occurs at a very young age, 6 to 8 years. But imagine if we had maxilla also following the same pattern, that is around 6 to 8 years of age, imagining that the maxilla is also having a same time period. So what happens is that years later, during the growth spurt period, the pubertal growth spurt period, mandible will be growing faster than and more in dimension than maxilla. So during the pubertal growth period, mandible will be growing more than the maxilla. So if it is unmatched growth of this mandible is not compensated by any mechanism in maxilla, then it can cause discrepancies in the occlusion, because maxilla is not much growing as the mandible, and if there is no mechanism so as to accommodate the increase in growth of the mandible, then it can result in malocclusion. So the increase in maxilla in the intercanine dimension is happening till the age of 12 years for girls and 16 years of boys. So please note that this is almost the time period during which there is a growth spurt for girls and boys. So this acts as a safety valve mechanism so as to compensate or so as to catch up the increase in growth of the mandible during the growth spurt. So this can avoid any flush terminal plane or class 2 tendencies and maintain a proper occlusion. So that is what safety valve mechanism is all about. So there is a prolonged time period for the increase in the intercanine dimension of the maxilla, which is the safety valve mechanism, so as to compensate for the increased growth of mandible during the growth spurt period. So hereby we conclude the discussion on development of dentition. This is actually a very simple chapter and most of the questions are very straightforward. There is not much complications, but please do remember which are all the transient or self-correcting malocclusions, which is extremely important because you might get clinical cases based on this. Like as I have told you previously, in ugly duckling stage, you have to understand at what time period the ugly duckling is occurring. So around 8 to 9 years of age. So your question might be having a hint like that: a 9-year-old boy or an 8-year-old boy is presenting with midline diastema. So what is the treatment that you have to do? do. So you might be given options like advise fixed mechanotherapy, or you might be given options like removable appliances with springs. Then there will be one option where is to wait and watch or observe the patient, not to do any active treatment. So always remember that it is a self-correcting malocclusion, so you have to go for the third option. So like that, all the spacing in primary dentition, everything that kind of clinical scenario questions you can expect from this chapter. Otherwise, most of the questions will be very direct forward, like how much is the leeway space of Nance in maxilla, in mandible, all the direct factual questions, very simple questions you can expect from this chapter. So that is an easy fetch. So you don't want to miss out anything from this chapter, because if you lose very simple questions like that, you will have very poor scores, and that will affect your rank in the NEET exams. So make sure that you are always thorough with such simple and straightforward topics, and always put into practice what you have learned. The clinical perspective is always dependent on what you know theoretically. So please try the questions. Do let me know if there are any doubts. Thank you. All the best.